right, welcome to our free seminar for glacier climbing and rescue. And hello to everybody out there who's watching us online. I'm Darren with the club, and I'm here to present some practical tips for traveling on glaciers for us all, and a few little tidbits for rescue. This is kind of a precursor to an online training that we have for SIG 3.4, which is now being offered. And also that leads into the free training practices that we have out in the field coming up in May. We have 3 on Mount Shasta, and we have 3 or 4 on Donner Peak, all through April and May. So this is just to give you a little taste of what that's all about. I want to thank Bobcats Outdoor for hosting us in his space. And by the way, members, if he's here, you guys get 28% off stuff in store. So I think he's going to be here at 8. So yeah, make sure you check out what we've been ordering and supplying for you. I think that's about all the good stuff. Okay, let's get started. So I'm going to use a PowerPoint as a visual, and some of the time I'm going to be tracing on the pictures. So go ahead and let's go to the next slide. And so I'll try my best to, those of you who are here in person, you'll be able to see a little better. Those of you online, we'll do our best to help you follow us. So, and then we'll do a practical demonstration here too, and then I'll have a whiteboard that we'll use for demo. So talking about glaciers real quick, I'm going to ask you all, how would you describe a glacier? Anybody got a quick definition for me?
Ice in the mountain.
Ice in the mountains, okay. I heard ice, okay. Ice in the mountain, ice. Crevasses.
Ice moving.
Ice moving on the mountain, creating crevasses. Now we're getting there. So I would describe it as, what I've heard described it as a river of ice, but it's very solid, slow moving river, okay. So because it moves on a gradient, it will form at a high elevation because of excessive snowfall, compact, and then start sliding down the mountain under its own weight. And while it does that, it will deform because of the forces of gravity and the bed that it's riding on. And so that's the two things that create all of the wonderful features we get to play on, gape at, and fall into on a glacier. So hopefully you won't have the latter. But here's some glaciers in California that we like to frequent. Does anybody know where the Whitney Glacier is? And the answer is it's not on Whitney. Shasta, right. How about the Hotland Glacier? Also on Shasta, and there's some others. It's got more of them. How about the Palisade Glacier? One guess where that is. Palisades, and where are the Palisades? Eastern Sierra. If you drive to the town of Independence and go, well, obviously west from there, you're going to go to Big Pine, Independence. You go west from there, you go to Big Pine Canyon. It's there. So it's south of Bishop Pass and north of Williamson and Tyndall, as using land, if you guys know. In any case, that's the biggest glacier in California by mass, by land area. The Hotlam is the biggest glacier I would call it the most crevassed, and the Whitney is the longest, okay? So that's why those 3 are pretty awesome. Long, cool, big. All right, let's go to the next one. So to look at how they, tell you what, this would be a very appropriate pointer. I'm going to use this. So there's a couple different parts of a glacier. This part way up here at the top is where the snowfall exceeds snow melt, so that's called the zone of accumulation. And below that is the ablation zone. That's a fancy word that just means that it melts faster than it can accumulate, okay? So between those two is what's called the Fern line. So it's not of course, it's not an actual line, it's kind of a gradient. But this would be, in this slide they call it zone of wastage, but this would be the ablation zone, the lower parts of the glacier that are icy and bare. Then the upper parts, which are snowy and snow covered. So those two parts are, at minimum, you need to understand that, because the glacier changes as you climb up, assuming we're coming from lowlands. As you climb, discover different things you need to navigate and negotiate, and the glacier will change as you ascend it. So therefore, your techniques need to be different too. See about that. The other two parts here to know about are after the zone of wastage would be the moraine, which is all of that rock, unsorted debris. There will be many crevasses, and your travel might be very non-direct. Okay, but that is a good time to go if you don't mind having to end run and step around all of them, because snow bridges are gone, the glacier's bare, at least in North America. How about winter? What will it look like? What will the glacier be like in wintertime?
Particularly dangerous because a lot of the crevasses will be covered in ice, and any snow bridges will probably be very weak.
Good, especially in early winter. That's right. So Steve said it'll be dangerous because the snow bridges may or may not be fully formed, and whatever is there will be covered with a layer of snow that may or may not support your weight. So late fall, early winter is the worst time of all to be on a glacier because it's very open, travel is difficult, and they're just barely getting covered, just enough that they certainly will not hold you. So don't ever go climbing in a glacier anytime after, say, November. Okay? Just leave it alone. Come back in March. Okay? At the earliest. So after the winter time, the snow gets actually fills in many crevasses and bridges them, of course. In spring, it'll look pretty, okay? And it'll be more safe because you'll be able to bridge the crevasses. And then as the snow gets more dense in the summertime, and I would classify this starting around June for mountain seasons, from June to July that summer, okay? Then they will be pretty firm, and you'll be able to see them opening up so you can detect where they are, but you can still walk over the crevasses. So that's a good time to go. So the main window is about May to July. It's only about 3 months here in this area of the world. Any questions about that?
Another thing is, at the end of spring, there's lots of water flowing.
True.
That
Summer even more. There's a lot of water flowing on the glacier. That's not necessarily a hazard. Just don't slide into it. I'll talk about that hazard in a minute.
And does it vary a lot based on the actual season for that year? So you might have a strong winter, so it, and so vary a lot. So like not just a week, but maybe a whole month.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it also, when I talk about, let's say in fall, I talk about the glacier being icy and bare. Well, the lower parts of the glacier in the ablation zone are always icy and bare. Always. Okay, because that's where it's getting down to lower elevations where it's melting into nothing, right? Mm-hmm. So the firn line is going to move up and down the glacier as the seasons go on, So we're talking about just as a whole, that's what the glacier looks like. So let's go on. Those are great questions. Keep those coming. Oh, skip that one. I forgot to put that picture in. Okay, so we're going to look at real slides of places that mostly I have been, but other people in the club too. But I know these places, so I put those in there. So first guess, where do you think this glacier is? It is in California. It is on Shasta. Yep. Keep going, Gergu. What do you think?
It's either the Bola or the Hotland.
It is the Hotland Glacier. That's right. This is the first ice fall. There's 3 ice falls in the Hotland. Here is an ice fall right here. It's all chunky, broken up, multiple crevasses crossing, creating seracs. This is a particularly nasty cliff in the ablation zone with all kinds of dirt on it that falls down frequently. You can see here a bunch of open crevasses in the ablation zone and much open ice and crevasses here in this ablation zone, and then the moraine here, a big pile of dirt at the end, and then not glacier here. So you got ice fall, accumulation zone. You've got ablation zone, ice, yucky. You've got another crevasse zone here, a crevasse zone here, and the moraine. So you got many different parts of the glacier all at once. Let's keep going. So to talk about the different types of hazards that are there, we've already discussed crevasses, and I'll talk about the mechanism that creates those. I'm going to break these down to a couple other icy things you should know about in the terminology. So the Bergschrund, that's my best German accent, is the mother crevasse, is what I call it, at the top of the glacier where it breaks away from the head wall. So it's usually the most widespread and the deepest. Often that is a barrier to getting onto the route itself. The seracs, does anybody know what creates a serac? Mary?
I don't know what creates it. I know
It's a
like more
tall,
like a tower.
it's a tall freestanding column of ice. So what do you think? It's easy. What do you think would create that?
The crack.
Cracks, crack, plural,
Right.
right? So let's say there's a crevasse and another crevasse. So it just slices and dices until it's this, freestanding tower that could fall over at any time. Multiple seracs create an ice fall. Then this last one is fairly interesting. The moulin. I don't know for certain, but I thought that I heard this was a French word and it means well. You tell me.
Yeah, that's what's used.
It means well, and it's
No,
called
it's not means went, but yeah, well.
a
that's
well.
I don't know, but that's the word that's used.
Okay,
Some is German, some is French, some
Yeah.
is English, some is.
that's right.
Who knows?
German, but this I heard was French for well.
I thought it was
And-
windmill.
Windmill. Anyway, it's a hole you don't want to fall into. So when you were talking about, Christian, the water that's running on the surface of the glacier, it forms these little streams, and then of course at some point it's going to go into a crevasse. So free-flowing water in the ablation zone that goes into a crevasse is a deadly place to be. If you slip into that, you'll certainly drown and freeze, one or the other. First, I'm not sure which, but so don't go into those. Stay well clear of moulins. They do
Because the
exist.
water is great ice climbing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. People train in this. I've trained in that.
Oh, really?
When
In a
there's no
moulin?
water. Yeah, it's great.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
The
Well,
guy,
make sure you're roped.
yeah, when there's no water, like in fall.
Oh, when there's no water.
Yeah, when
Oh,
there's
okay.
no water.
Oh, okay.
No,
Well,
if there's water.
It's
no.
a great place to collect water, which is one of the reasons why people have slipped and fallen into them. So I'm just telling you. That's
And the
what it
best way
is.
to detect those is just audio.
Eyeballs. You'll see the stream disappear into a crevasse. That's it. Yeah. So don't go in there.
So it's not necessarily
follow the
underground. It's not necessarily under. It's
No,
top
it
going in.
on the surface, dropping into a crevasse. So
Gotcha.
if you get in that stream and slip,
Yeah.
you could fall in and then go into a pool.
Yeah.
Because the crevasse will have submerged water, and it'll be down in there. It'll be a cave of water.
So you get a chance then to be a nice swim in the lake at the bottom of the.
Yeah.
If you're lucky.
If you're a cave diver, this is the place where you go. You go into these moulins and go explore it. Anyway, so let's talk about crevasse formation. There's a couple forces at work. So I'm going to try to use my handy-dandy fist to describe it. So this would be a bump in the mountainside, okay? So we would call this a convexity, okay? It's convex. So as the glacier comes down, it's going to go over this bump, okay? And that's going to stretch it open. You can imagine kind of busting the upper crust, and that creates the crevasse. So anytime a glacier goes over a convexity, it will be cracking and creating crevasses. So you want to avoid bumps, hills, okay, little or big. The reverse is a concavity, which is a hole. So as the glacier flows down into it, it will pile up on itself at the bottom, and that will form compression. Okay, compression will force the crevasses to close. So concavity is tension. Convexity is tension, okay? And concavity is compression. Those are the two forces.
And then isn't there also consideration of when the crevasse or when the glacier bends
Mhm.
and the compression and
Yeah.
expansion of those areas as well?
Yes, that's right. So on the inside corner, just like on a real river, it's going to be moving slower and it's going to be kind of piled up and smashed into itself. So inside corners are better on a glacier. That's where there'll be compression. On the outside corner, there will be tension or spreading, and that's why you'll get radial crevasses. Okay? So
It's like, because that's what you said, so it's like it's a viscosity,
Viscosity,
of,
yes.
it's like a fluid. People
Mhm.
who work on that, they work like on fluid. And
it is fluid dynamics
Yeah.
in super slow motion. Yeah.
But I'm just internalizing now. Yeah, even when it's flat, it will have crevasses because the edges are actually slower than the center. I'm just realizing
Correct.
right
Just
now
like
as
the
we
river.
speak. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
It'll
why
move
there's
the fastest in the
crevasses.
center, right at the surface.
I never realized before until right now.
If you've ever studied river dynamics, it's exactly like a glacier. It's just, or I should say, a glacier is exactly like a river. So you're right. So, but to break it down to a simple stuff, it's really only about tension and compression. So you want to link zones of compression. You want to stay on inside corners, and you want to stay in places where the glacier is going through concavities rather than convexities and outside corners. Let's go on. We're going to do that as we go through the slides. That's what I say. Link crevasse-free zones. So here's a couple things to note. You want to get the big picture and then go all the way down to the next step on the glacier and everything in between. So you know, if I have to get over there, but I'm going to encounter XYZ crevasse, am I going to go around this way or up high and drop down? I mean, just like route finding on a rock route. You have a goal, you have where you are, and then you have all the little intermediate route finding steps in between. So try to get a big picture of the glacier, actual photo, or get your eyeballs on it somehow, and then memorize or somehow mark the major features, and then as you navigate through it, try to link those together, the crevasse-free zones. Make sure that you go the right time of year and the right time of day. Early is better, right? Because the glacier actually changes a lot, just like all snow routes do, as they get warm. So it's very important that you get up early and get on the glacier, and if you have to come back down through a crevasse zone, that you're more vigilant in the afternoon when snow bridges may be sagging and things would be less solid. Make sure that you keep an accurate mental record or actually photo record or some sort of topographic record on top of that of where you're going. You could even mark waypoints or elevations. Because glaciers are so high, they're often subject to bad weather and whiteouts. And if you're not marking your route and or don't have the GPS, you could be in a world of white, actually, if bad weather comes in and no way really to know almost literally what's up and what's down and where you are. So they're very confusing to travel through. Everything looks the same. Like I said here, mark or record your route. So let's go to this strategies for travel and protection on the next one. Depending on what you get, there are some considerations for glacier travel. So if you have a bare ice glacier that's free of snow, your rope strategy, distance between climbers, prussics, cordelettes, stopper knots, and other considerations will be different than if you've got a soft snow, heavily crevassed glacier. So this is easy, simple, fast, no real protection, going through a gradient to very slow, possibly very dangerous, definitely need to take care. So you can see how it changes from no rope to consider roping to roping and then roping to be ready to rescue people. Distance between climbers is about the same. You start roping up at about low risk. Prussics and cordelettes, stage 1, you don't even have them at all. In low risk, you would carry them, and then you would consider pre-placing them, and then you would definitely pre-place them at this level. Stopper knots is really just alpine butterflies tied in the rope about every 15 to 20 feet or so, that they wedge into the lip of the crevasse and prevent a catastrophic fall. You would really consider those highly up here, and then some other just considerations about what you're up against. So you don't. The point of showing this to you is to say that you don't always prepare the same way for glacier travel. It all is condition dependent. But you need to know how to do this column so that when or if you do get to a glacier like that, you'll be ready to go.
I have a comment here. It's a close topology where the high risk is right next to the no risk. So you might be starting no risk, you go up and you're in the high risk zone because this is heavily crevasse glacier. So the way to think about it is the no risk and high risk is a fine line between those two.
Yeah, that's right. This could be the ablation zone.
Right.
And as you go up this glacier, you could go right through these gradients all the way to high risk by the time you get to the accumulation zone. So you may end up roping up and putting on prussics and putting in stopper knots at some point, or you may not, depending on your routes. All right, let's head on. Okay, so now let's look at real photos. Enough of that technical jumble. So here's a route that is very indicative of glacier travel. This would be on Mount Rainier. This is the West Tahoma Glacier that comes off the west side. So maybe you've never been to this. Some of you've climbed it a couple times. I don't know
Yeah,
if you've
but not this route.
seen this side.
Yeah.
So what you've got here is a 14,400 foot summit. You've got a 13,000 foot plateau that the glacier spills off of and goes down through quite a steep area with lots of convexities, okay, creating quite a series of crevasses. Spreads out. You can see a section of ice fall right there. You can see a section of ice fall right here, and then a little spot right in the center where it's a little bit of a zone of compression. More messiness here, lots of messiness there, more mess, all the way down to the ablation zone. So our goal to get to here was to come up this rocky ridge here above the glacier, set up base camp at a high point, actually right about there, to where we could drop down onto the glacier and miss all of this yucky stuff down here. Climb up through this area, this heavily crevasse zone here, and then to the summit. So we're going to go through this and talk about how to get through these crevasses. Let's go to the next one. This is what it looks like from base camp. So I'm showing these photos basically just to study this particular glacier. So you see rocks right here? See how the glacier is piling up in like big piles of like mashed potatoes on top of it. And that's what it does until it can no longer sustain itself, and then it falls down. So there'll be debris here at the bottom of this rock. Same thing here, how it's all piling up. It's got this big ridge. And then this in particular, look at all these crevasses here, and then a destroyed zone of fallen seracs here. So our goal is to get down into this smooth area, come around this corner, and then if we decide to come up on this, to come up through here, or decide to go over into a valley on this side. One of the problems, however, is this super tall cliff right here that's got like 35 years worth of snow piled up on top of it. I counted them.
36.
Yeah, it went all the way back to the year before I was born, 1973. And so it was constantly shedding ice and huge blocks. So we said, no way we're going to go over there. So we didn't really know that until we base camped here and watched the glacier for a while. So that's one zone. Another zone we could have chosen, and then there's a couple other routes around the corner. So we'll go look at those. Let's start at the bottom. Let's go on to, okay, so this is what the ablation zone looks like. It is quite a messy place. All of the rocks are unsorted and unbalanced and just sitting in huge heaps. It's a little bit dangerous because there could be big boulders waiting to fall down. So it's all loose and very icy. You may think that you're on a dirt pile, but underneath it is actually super hard frozen ice with gravel embedded in it. And so you sometimes have to use crampons on this stuff because there might be ice right underneath it. Let's go on to the next one.
So with global warming.
Yeah, you'll see more of this. So here's the first place where we believe we stepped onto the glacier proper, and sure enough, there was our first big crevasse, very open, like they are in the ablation zone. With the big, you can see ice poking through right here. So this was a lot of dirt piled up, but this is still the glacier itself. So easy not to fall into those because they're easy to see, but they're still quite big. Let's go on. This is the sort of thing you're going to see, meltwater pools. Who knows if there's actually a crevasse underneath there or not. Weird snow that ends on top of dirt, may or may not have ice. So we try to stay on the dirt as much as possible, assuming that those are safe places to travel. See the big boulder next to tiny grains of sand and all unsorted, weird stuff. This rock, who knows how long ago that fell down from the pile. Okay, so let's go on. Continuing with some of the things you're going to see, this is not Rainier. This is actually the Hotland Glacier again. So this is far left as you come up through the ablation zone. Very distinctive pattern here of a crevasse. So you can assume that the space of snow between that crack and that crack is just a snow bridge, right? And that if you follow this, it may be right where you're at right here. This crack may have gone all the way across.
What is a sagger? What does sagger mean?
A sagger, yeah. So this is a cracker, okay? A sagger is a snow bridge that is sagging, okay? And when it does that, it will fill up with dirt and just little bits of dust and stuff, and it may be a different color. This is a sagger right here.
Oh, okay.
You see that? So that may be a crevasse, or it might just be part of the hill. I don't know. But I'm going to stay away from that area, and if I have to cross it, I'll probe. Sagger, cracker.
It's all parallel here too. The Sager is parallel to that big crack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm assuming it probably is a covered crevasse. Okay, let's head on. So here's a hidden, this is just down the frame from those former pictures. I know it's hard to tell because it's a photo. This is a rock, that's a rock, but this is a hole, okay? And this hole is open and then it closes up again, but you can see how it's kind of dropped down here. This is more of a darker color. So this crevasse continues all the way across this frame and may even go more over this direction. But the only way we could detect it was because of its unusual linear shape that was perpendicular to the fall line, like a lot of crevasses are, and of course because it actually revealed itself being a hole here. So coming up from the backside, I think that we actually walked over this direction, kind of probing, and we got up to this point, we're like, oh, it's open. What do you know? So looked inside there. It was a deep one.
Oh yeah, you don't see unless you go up, basically, right? Yeah.
Sometimes, yeah. So that's, many times they're just hidden. You may or may not see opening like that. Okay, let's go on.
One question.
Yeah,
at that point, were you guys roped? Because I see one guy there that is not roped at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we weren't roped at that point.
Okay.
Yeah, we were just probing. So here's a picture back on Rainier of an ice fall. And these little dark lines, those are winters. So that's, those are summers. And the white space between them is winter. So that's a summer, that's a summer, that's a summer. So that's about 3 or 4 years worth of snow right there piled up. And it's a big jumbled mess. And so don't, see how it has this debris down here at the very base of it? Don't set up lunch there at the bottom, okay? Go somewhere else. You'll hear the if you've ever been on a glacier that's active enough, and many are, you'll hear creaking and groaning and kind of things falling and stuff. Let's head on to the next one. Okay, so going back to our discussion about convexities and compression zones. So I want you to notice that there's a big hump thing going on right here, okay? And that there's not a hump thing going on here. So this would be a convexity. This would be a concavity. And then also look to the fact that this glacier comes up, it rises, and it fractures into a bunch of pieces right here, and then goes on down, flowing down the mountain. So this is all fractured zone where it's passing over something that's convex in shape. Same thing here and same thing there. So our little route would be to come through here, which is why the flag is right there. This was the route that we came up this particular section. All right, let's head on. So here's going from base camp down to the glacier. So again, convexity, icefall, convexity, icefall. Then it mellows out into kind of a flat area, but still the tensile stress of the glacier is forming perpendicular crevasses. Okay, so our pathway would be to come down into here, come through there, and then head right through this little zone right there. If we did have to go onto the crevasses, we'd have to walk them parallel and then see if we could jump across or come over the ends.
So you can get fairly close to the edges of those crevasses?
Fairly close. These are not, these are nice because the edge is pretty crisp, but that's not always the case, as we'll see here in a second. Let's go on to the next ones. Yeah, you can get fairly close, but I have more to talk about that in a second. So continuing the route, again, you can assume there's lots of rocks underneath here, which is why it's all broken. See the debris piled up at the base of the miniature ice fall here. Again, a zone of compression right through here, right up through there. So it's really the only pathway on this glacier. However, especially like right here, even though it looks like there's no crevasses there, it's very likely that there is one. See that there's a little bit of an evidence there. So you're going to probe and possibly put people on kind of a half delay here as they pass through this zone. All right, let's head to the next one. Okay, so here's what I was discussing about. Sometimes they have crisp edges, and many times they don't. This is a typical snow bridge. Where is the edge? It's your guess. I don't know either. Because what's happened is it forms a bridge, and then it kind of falls, and then it snows again and kind of forms something, and it shifts and fills in, and then it falls. And so it's not like a neat little arching bridge that heads over, with a handrail. It's a roof that's fallen in and been reconstructed many different times. So you can see that it's somewhat vertical and pieces, and it may have parts of it down in the crevasse. So even if you did break through, you might hit another roof section right below it. Let's hope you do, if you have to head in there. Let's hope you have many chances to stop. And that is likely. So that's why you don't want to just, go right up to the edge, because it could be overhanging.
Mm-hmm.
And you also want to give them a pretty wide berth as you go around the edge. Let's go on to the next one. Here's another picture of a snow bridge. So where are you going to cross here? Could you traipse across this and jump over that? Or I would just go wide, just go wide. You certainly can't really get through all of this mess. So this is why it's important to be on the glacier at the right time of year. So some more route finding practice. If we were to head up on this ridge line here, likely we'd be able to reach the summit, okay? So we're going to start here, wind up through those two big convexities I already pointed out, probing, watching. We're going to be roped up, marking our route, come around this way, and then come up the ridge to the top. That's a close-up of this area right here. That's convexity 1, convexity 2, 1 and 2. Some of the same pictures I showed you. Oh, I know why I have this here, because you can actually see our trail. So we're splitting the difference between hazards. So between those two, we go right in the center. And then as this comes up a little closer, we split the difference between those two, go right in the center there. And then between these two, go right in the center there, and then come right up through the middle. Try to keep equal distance between hazards as we travel. The resolution isn't very good, so I apologize. Okay, continue on. There's the route again. Many ways you could go. Just note that there are some very large crevasses. So on this particular route, I do not have any summit pictures because right here, there was a huge crevasse that was something like a bergschrund that was all the way across. And one little dippy snow bridge that was like this thick that just was tempting us to cross this particular crevasse this year when we climbed it. We knew if we got across that we probably wouldn't be there on the afternoon we came back. So we had to call it at that point. So this was the high point that we got to. So 2 crevasse to actually travel. I went back to this particular glacier a second year and had the same result. I had spent 2 summers trying to climb this glacier and never got to the top because it was so crevassed. Could not actually get up, at least with my skills. So it is possible that the route finding is so complex and dangerous that, or difficult that you can't actually get through. So key. If we had been there maybe a month earlier when they were more closed, more snowed in, then we might have been able to make it. But we were there in August. It was too late. It was too late for that year.
And how did you say you marked the route with flags? And
Mark it with a wand. So it's a little bamboo stick, a little flag on top. So it's like a manual waypoint. Okay. And that I've got some pictures of that coming up. Let's go to the next one. Okay, this is just more photos. You can see how pretty even the crevasses are here, the rugged nature of the ice fall on top, and the pathway just moving around all of the ends of all these crevasses as we went through here. Continue. Okay, here's wanding. So, by the way, knots in the rope, okay? So this is a bunch of wands on a pack, and as we come up the glacier or descend it both, we're going to want to mark our path so that we can see it. Can you go to the next one, Scott, just to see what I've got there? Okay, go back to the wanding one. So with wanding, what we want to do is we want to place them so that we can see one wand from the next. And if the weather's really bad, it would be even better to have them only a rope length apart. So that, let's say that we were at one point and we were looking for the other wand, this would be our rope, that we would only have to search the length of the rope to find the next wand because we knew that it was somewhere within that 200-meter circle. Or 200 meter circle. 60-meter circle, 200 feet. But that's ideal. And most glaciers are too big to really allow that because you're going to be carrying like 75 wands if that's the case. So, okay, let's go on to the next one. Okay, So now we're nearing the end of the picture. So the question is, how do we protect ourselves on the glacier? If it's flat and there's very little chance of us having an issue, then we can climb on it without being roped up. But even if it is very open and we can see the crevasses, one thing I haven't really discussed is the steepness of the glacier. Because not only is there a danger of you falling into a crevasse, there's also the danger of you sliding into a crevasse because you lost your footing and you couldn't self-arrest. So even if the navigation is easy or safe, if there's a chance of someone sliding into a crevasse because of the angle of the glacier, it's steep, then you would be more likely to rope up, like this team is doing here. So they're traveling roped. I hope that they're using pro. They may or may not be. But that's because the danger of sliding. It's going to be very icy and possibly you can't self-arrest quick enough. So let's head on to the next one. So once we decide to rope up, we got a couple of questions to ask ourselves. One is, how long of a rope are we going to use and how many climbers are we expecting to have on that rope? So to do a little bit of math here, I'm going to use my board here. I'll try to be simple and not too confusing. Oh, okay. Let's just do the 60-meter rope. Okay, so I'm going to use the black to represent a 60-meter rope. Okay. And one thing to note about this is that you always want to have 8 to 10 meters between each climber. Okay. So on a 60-meter rope, I've got 5 sections of 10 meters each, right? So maximum I could fit on there would be 5. I'm not going to do that. You want to do more like 2, 3, or 4, okay? The typical is 3. So with 3, we're going to have one person exactly in the middle. We're going to have another person that's 10 meters on either side of him or her, okay? So this total distance is 10 meters here, okay? And then you're going to have the rest of 60 left on the end. So you're going to have 20 here and 20 here, right? This amount right here gets coiled up into this person's pack. And this amount right here gets coiled up into this person's pack. And everyone ties in and they travel in this manner. So that's the typical rope team setup. The reason for this coiling is because it's a rescue coil, okay? So that you can drop this down into your crevasse and pull people up. Pretty clear on that? Yeah? Okay.
You put 3 butterflies or 1 butterfly and configure it?
All butterflies. All alpine butterflies. All right. So let's say we have 4 people. I'll just do these 2 scenarios. Okay. Once again, 60. Okay, this is a little trickier. See if I can draw this correct. So the midpoint would be there. So we want to have 5 and 5 on each side of the midpoint, right? So we want to have a person here and a person here. Between those 2, we want 10. And then we want another 10 here, 8 or 10. And another 8 or 10 here. So that's 30. Minus 60 is 30 left. So that would mean that 15 would be on the ends. Is my math correct? Okay. So you still have about as much of a rescue coil, okay, for this person and for this person. And you've got 2 people in the middle.
So it's more important to have a 60-meter rope than have exact, precise meters for each end and in between climbers.
It is nice to have to split up all of your available rescue footage evenly. Because you never know it's going to be the first or the last person to fall in. So all of this procedure starts with finding the middle of the rope. Usually starts with that. There's different procedures for breaking it up, and that's what we'll teach you in training courses. It's too complicated to try to demonstrate it here or to draw it. But so that's how you would break the rope up for a 4 and a 3-person team. If you had a 30-meter rope, which is popular because a lot of 8mm ropes for glacier travel only come in 30 meters, then if you're only a 2-person team, then you're going to still have rescue coils. But if you had to put 3 people on the rope, then you can see that you're going to end up with hardly any rescue coil left at all. So you should probably carry another 30-meter rope. But who carries it, the first or the last person? That's the question. So it's really not a good idea to put 3 people on a 30-meter rope. That's really more of a 2-person rope system. So, okay, there's a couple other configurations, but I think it's good enough. All right. Questions about the rope?
Yeah, I'm so confused about the butterflies again. Don't they have to be weighted on both sides?
Yeah.
But if you have a loose rope next to it.
Oh, it's not necessarily loose. I mean, with the rescue coil, you could put it on your body like a kiwi coil, or you could put it in your pack. Yeah. You need to have that end loose.
No, well, then I understand, but why don't you just do a figure 8?
Oh, because an alpine butterfly is the type that can be weighted both directions. So the knot stands up perpendicular, and it can be untied easily. You can use a figure 8 on a bike if you wish.
Because if the first person falls, right, isn't that a bit dangerous to have, if it's weighted only one side, but not the other?
No, it's totally full strength, no matter which way it comes from. Yep, let's head on to the next slide, if we can.
Maybe it's like open system versus closed system.
So, no, I'll talk about that in the actual training. there is a reason why you do tie into the end sometimes, but not in tonight's seminar. So some of the things you want to ask yourselves again is which knot you're going to use. 8 on a bite is fine, but butterfly is better most times. Whether you're going to put stopper knots in, which is the same knot over again, the alpine butterfly. Whether you're going to put prosthetics on the rope, and how you're going to distribute the rescue gear. How would you distribute it? Evenly. Thank you. That's right. And then, as far as travel, I've talked about all this.
Everybody needs to have the skills. If someone doesn't know what to do with the gear, then
yeah, and there's no point of being on the glacier if someone doesn't know how to rescue.
Yeah.
Right. So that's why you want to get the training. So what you're going to do while you're traveling, you're going to step over if they're real close together and you can be certain of the edges, or you're going to end run the crevasses. That's your major 2 strategies. If you have a crossing like this one here over a snow bridge where it's it's a little bit dubious, then you can actually belay those. There's various methods to belay. Lots of them. Usually they're quick. They don't involve building a 3-point anchor necessarily. And as you're moving as a team, it's important that everyone understands that if you're going to hold coils, that's very infrequently, that you keep nice gentle tension between all parties so that if someone were to fall, they would accelerate less than if there was a lot of slack. And that you anticipate where the people front and behind you are going to move. So sometimes a person may be doing an end run and you're attached to them, you're going to have to move left and then move right as they come on the other side of the crevasse. So you might have to go backwards to give that tension, to keep that tension at all times. So wherever the team is traveling, the distance between each climber needs to remain relatively the same so that the rope is stretched out in a nice, gentle way.
So for the stopper knot, some people say that if you're like lots of people in the same room, you might not put stopper knots, but if there's only 2, you might put stopper knots.
Right. If you're traveling as a team of 2, you're already 1 man down, what you should have. So it's probably a good idea to put stopper knots on sooner rather than later. That might give you the extra edge of going all the way into the crevasse if you fall. Yeah, that's a good point. Let's go to the next one. Okay, so some of the equipment, of course, we always got to talk about that. You're going to have 1 or 2 ropes. They definitely need to be dry ropes. They should not be thick. 9 millimeters is probably fine for glacier travel only. If there's technical climbing on top of that, it might need to be a little bit more robust. But for glacier travel only, 8 millimeters is fine. An ice axe, of course, a snow picket, which is, those of you who might not have ever seen one or no one talked about it, it's one of these. It can be driven in this way or it can be buried as a dead man. So here's your tools, ice axe, snow picket. You might also want an ice screw or 3. It'd be nice if every person on the team had at least 1 of these, a picket and an ice screw. That would be great. And a mountain axe. So at least you could build, a 2-point anchor out of 2 of these 3 items, let's hope. No matter what the surface is, soft snow to ice, you could do something. Runners, which are these sewn flat items. This is a single. It's about 2 feet. And this one is a double. It's 4 feet. Okay. All right. So one of each, or a few of those. A cordelette, which I don't think I brought one of those out here, but it's a 7mm loop, 15, 20 feet long, tied with a figure eight, tied with a double fisherman's knot. You're gonna need to have a prusik. This is a prusik, tied with a also double fisherman's knot, and this is about a 5mm cord here. This is a good size for glacier travel because it's at least 3 millimeters smaller than the typical 8mm glacier rope, so it'll grip really good. This is, I think this is also 5. It looks a little thicker. I did have another one in here. This one, I think, is possibly 6. It's a little thicker. 6 is still okay, but 5 is a little better. And then carabiners, lockers, standard sleeve locker so it doesn't get jammed up with snow, with the non-snagging nose, quite wide. Useful for a moonter hitch and has a good working space. And then any standard size wire gate non-locker will work something like this. So you have an array of those things with you so that you can execute a rescue, which we'll get to here in a second. Oh wow, sort of 828. Okay, 822. Let's go on to the next one. So a couple things to talk about. First of all, navigate the glacier using all of your information and smarts. So you don't have to do a rescue, right? You don't want to ever do a rescue on a crevasse. I've only had one partner fall in before. I didn't have to rescue him. He just crawled out of the hole because he came up to here and stopped. But I want to be prepared. We all want to be prepared so that in the event that ever does happen, like practicing for a fire drill, you know what to do, okay? So the first most important thing is you must stop the fall. So that's why team self-arrest is important. As you're roped up together, everybody in the team should be able to execute a forceful self-arrest. It's very difficult to stop somebody who's really gaining speed. So even in a team of 3, we have to have 2 very strong climbers to stop somebody from going in. Once the fall has been stopped, then you need to coordinate the rescue. So to do that, you've got to communicate with the person down in there, and you've got to assess the situation, okay? This all depends on whether you have one rescuer, which is super difficult for just a 2-person team, or you have multiple rescuers. So one of the great things about the club is we often travel in multiple teams. So not only would there be your 2 or 3-person team, there would probably be another 2 or 3-person team, and maybe even another 2 or 3-person team to help. So yes, that's good. Safety in numbers. But you have to go to the edge and assess the situation, because maybe, let's go to the next slide, maybe that they can climb out on their own, okay? Maybe they could climb the rope, or they could climb out on belay. Those are both options. They're different results. One, they're climbing the rope itself, and the other one, they're climbing out, but you're belaying them, so you're taking that rope. Both of those are much better than having to haul somebody. Another option, surprisingly, is you can actually sometimes lower them to safety, because remember those collapsed snow bridges I was talking about? So sometimes you can lower them to a place where they can actually walk back out again. And that would be simple and safer. But if they can't climb the rope, if they can't climb out on belay, if they can't be lowered, and they're still in the crevasse, then what you've got to do is haul them. So that's where the crevasse rescue thing comes in. So choosing a system, it essentially boils down to 3 different systems, but each of them starts with the first, which is the Z-drag. Okay? So that's the only one I'm going to show you tonight. Because if you can understand the Z-drag, then you can build the others, the 5-to-1 and the 6-to-1. So I'm going to try to clear my table off here, and we're going to try to film from up top. And if you want to stand up, that would be great. That way you can see what I'm doing. And arrange yourself. We just got to have a clear camera shot of it for the people online who are watching this. So it's going to be very simple. Caribou, can you be my victim?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Put all the gear over here. Try to do this very simply. We can move this whiteboard out of the way. Okay. Scott, let me know when you're ready.
The behind Crevasse.
Yes. Okay, so there's many steps to this. So,
Yeah.
want someone to hold it up there for you? Go ahead and get started here. Actually, I think I'll.
Very good.
Got it? Let me know when you're ready.
You can turn their computers.
Oh, I guess I do have another half an hour, don't I? Okay, I was thinking I had to end by 8:30. Okay, I'm not that I'm going to take a half an hour. Okay, we'll just take 10 minutes. Then we'll be done.
I don't know what it's doing now. Sorry.
Let's just do this. There's normally an edge raising here, so you could try the next one over.
Oh,
No.
We're high tech here.
Good job, guys.
This is our first time doing a seminar in our new space. We're still kind of figuring it out. Okay, hello. Okay, guys, so my simulation is I have had a crevasse fall. Okay, no, that's your end. Remember, you got rescue coil and all that stuff. And so I'm just going to hold this here. This is me, okay? We've stopped the fall. We've coordinated the rescue. There's more than one rescuer. He cannot climb out. He cannot be lowered, and he cannot climb the rope. So we have to haul him. So we're going to establish an anchor and an anchor, and then we're going to equalize those two anchors, okay? And while I'm doing that, I'm going to clip myself in, okay, so that I'm safe. This is me clipping in, okay? There's no knot or anything. I'm just a place marker. Okay, so I'm going to find a point where this will be the edge of the crevasse right here, okay? I'm going to find a point that's equalized and in the direction of pull, and probably I'm going to choose to do something like this so that I can prevent an extension. Because you know, snow anchors, how reliable those are, right? And then I'm going to put in a locking carabiner for the master point, okay? Okay, now I need to identify the strand coming from my unfortunate teammate, okay? Now, I can't do that actually. This rope is under extreme tension right now, okay? So go ahead and give me a little bit of tension, okay? And it's on me, okay? So I'm only able to hook up the rest of the rope that's not under tension on this side to my safety line, but until I get the load transferred to the anchor, I'm going to be like, help, I'm going to get sucked into the crevasse. And my partner hopefully is doing something about this. He's building the anchor and going to set it up. But what we're going to want to do first is we're going to want to transfer the load. So I have a couple different options. I could simply put a prusik on here, okay, if I can learn how to attach it myself. I could do it with a single or a double, okay? If I'm climbing on this glacier and have, prepared myself well, I'll probably have these things hanging off my harness. So I think what I'm going to do is I will go ahead and I'll probably tie it up with this guy, okay? So I'm going to assume that I have a partner, and my partner is going to come over here, and they're going to save the day, okay? They are going to put a prusik on this line. We're going to use this heavy-duty prusik. Okay, that's once, twice, and 3 times a lady. You guys remember that song? Nobody laughed. I guess I'll stop reading that. All right.
Darren, you
Yeah.
mentioned earlier about sometimes you put prusik on the rope before you.
Right.
And that's for
You
this
see the wisdom
scenario?
of that?
Okay.
It's for climbing out of the crevasse primarily,
Okay.
but if I already have my Prussics hooked on the rope, then I can use that to affix the tensioned climbing rope that's holding my buddy's life to the anchor much more quickly.
Now, the person that's in the middle, assuming a 3-person team.
I'm the person in the middle.
Okay, then do you have one on
The other person's coming around building
No,
the
no,
anchor.
I'm saying that you have Prussics on both sides in case they fall.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, the person in the middle has a Prussic on both sides. That's correct. So, many options for connecting it here. This is where it gets a little sticky. So, if you're running out of strength, you could simply just hook this up, okay? And then I could back off, and then now the anchor would be keeping the tension, okay? This is okay if you have a knife with you, and you can build the rest of the system. So, but it's not ideal. The better way to do that, let's back up.
Why do you need a knife?
Because you're going to have to cut this. You may have to cut this at some point to release it.
To release it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The better thing to do is to put a munter in here. Okay? You guys remember how to tie this from SIG 2?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Put a munter in. Get it snugged up. Now remember, the rope's under tension. Okay? The rope's under tension, so this is just kind of like, it's like bowstring tight right here. So I'm just building this off to the side. Okay? I get my munter, and get this nice and snug right up against it. Put my munter on here. And then I'm going to tie this off. Can you go ahead and put tension on that just a little bit? That'll help. Okay, thank you. I'm going to get this tied off with a mule. Okay, so this is the PMMO. I won't be able to do the O. This is the Prussic, munter, mule, and then it would be an overhand to back this all up. This is a releasable friction hitch. This is the most complicated knot in traditional mountaineering. Okay, it's 4 knots in one. Prussic, munter, mule. So I haven't done the overhand part because I ran out of cord. So this is better because it can be released under load. So ideally, that's what I would do. So this is stage 1. Now we've prevented further crevasse fall. Before we move on, we need to actually put a hard knot on our line. Okay.
If any of these knots release, would it go, or does it still go through the locker once?
If this knot released, that's why I'm putting this knot on.
But before, if the mule releases.
If the mule releases?
If he puts a carabiner inside that loop, it's not going to release.
Yeah, that's right. I could do that.
Yeah.
That would be the
thing
PMMC.
If there's tension on that carabiner and you want to release it and it's cold and the rope is
That's
frozen,
a good idea.
it might be a little bit hard. But
ideally, I would have a cordelette. This is a great place to put a cordelette in, but ideal is not what happens on a crevasse on a glacier. A lot of times, you just work with what you got. So this is a very likely situation. You would run out of cord to tie off that overhand. But when we practice this in the field, I'm going to have you guys do it perfectly with all the right gear and enough time to look at it. I'm just giving you a brief overview. So PMMO, and I've got the hard knot tied in and locked.
So that knot is a catastrophe knot?
Yeah, catastrophe, okay. To prevent a catastrophe.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So this is the point at which I'm going to go down to the edge of the crevasse and assess what's going on. So I'm going to have Prussic on here, go down there. Hey, Gargoo, can you climb out? No. Can we haul? I mean, can we lower you? Can you climb the rope? No, damn you, no. So, okay, well, we'll haul then, I guess.
Actually, I have a question. Do you think you're still tied in or not?
Oh, yeah, you're still tied in.
When you go to the crevasse.
Oh, tied in?
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
no.
in practice, I can imagine.
No, because
okay,
all of this rope is going to be used for the rescue, okay? But I would still be attached with a safety.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Go down to the edge of the crevasse, probably pad the lip. There's a bunch of steps I'm kind of glossing over, but then come back. So if we're going to haul, then what we've got to do is build a 3-to-1 system. So right now what we have is a progress capture right here. This will prevent the rope from going down into the crevasse. And as we haul the rope up, it will continue to feed if we do it right, okay? or if someone can manage it, it'll continue to feed, and then when we have to reset, it'll grab. So I'll show you how that's built. Take this out. At this point, we have an opportunity to put a device right here that will help us. What should we use? Well, we could use a carabiner with an integrated pulley. We could use a nylon pulley, lightweight aluminum one. If we decide to spend the money or carry that weight up the glacier, we could use a steel ball bearing full strength pulley. All of these are great for reducing the friction at this point, and would be good choices. We can also use a belay device that has the ability to prevent this prusik from feeding through here. So they all have different advantages. It would be up to you guys to decide what you use here. But there are other more complicated, expensive devices that actually function as a pulley and a ratchet, like Petzl makes one. They make quite a few. I've never used any of those. I'm trying to keep this to just the equipment we're going to be carrying on our bodies on a typical climb. So I would say out of all of these, because you wouldn't normally carry pulleys, let's just go ahead and go with this one, okay? Which is going to prevent the prusik from feeding into our first point where it goes around the corner here, okay? So this is only here to prevent the prusik from feeding into this corner. That's all it does. It doesn't provide a belay or anything, although it could. And then up here, we're going to take our fancy prusik, and we're going to put in either a climb heist or an actual prusik. I would say probably a climb heist is better, because we're only going to go one direction and it's faster, so we can get our partner out of the crevasse as soon as possible. And the direction that we want to pull, of course, is down this way. So here's our climb heist, the faster friction hitch. Okay. And then we're going to hook another carabiner on here. Now, at this point, again, we have a choice of a pulley. Okay. So if you have one, let's say you did have one, let's go ahead and stick that in there. Okay. Or you could just run it right through the carabiner like that. This is the 3-to-1. Okay. Here's the parts. You have the rope that comes up from the crevasse. You have the progress capture releasable friction hitch, ideally PMMO, prusik Munter Mule overhand. You have the master point where most of the load comes through, secondary master point, with some sort of device to either reduce friction or prevent the prusik from feeding through this loop. Then it goes back up to here to a haul point friction hitch, probably a climb heist, and the come back. Do you see the Z? Okay, so that's how you know you've done it right. So now let's actually use it. So go ahead and give me a little bit of friction, a little bit of tension on there. Okay, so what's going to happen is, as we're hauling this, there's many different methods to make this go that way. We're going to haul this. See how this is feeding up the rope? We want this to be loose enough that it will stop here at the device and keep floating as we're
keep the prusik, that's your ratchet. Yeah.
The prusik is the ratchet. It's the progress capture. Sometimes if you're on a 3-person team, one person's job will be to make sure this happens. Okay. This is the very simple, basic tools 3-to-1 right here.
Because you're keeping it instead of putting the auto block. Sorry.
Okay, so what's going to happen at some point is we're going to get locked out. Okay, see this? Get locked out right here. At that point, then we take this, we set the brakes, okay? Set the brakes on there, release it, okay? Set, and then we reset this one. Go back to the crevasse edge on a safety prusik or tied in, okay? And keep hauling again. So without regard to the friction in the system, your physics, without regard to friction in the system, I should be able, every 3 feet that I pull here would translate into 1 foot of travel on the rope. But in reality, because of the friction, the heat, and all that stuff, it's really more like 2-to-1, which is why this isn't a terribly efficient system, but it's a starting place for you guys. Okay?
I mean, it's still 3-to-1 in speed, right? But it's just not.
In terms of
in
force?
terms of force.
In force, it's not. Yeah. So, come on up, Gergo. We got hot lunch for you up here, buddy. Come on.
So you're keeping that pressing in case you want to lower it, because why would you have the auto block on the belay device?
Oops. Why do I
Because
have
that can get
the...
stuck in your belay device, just like right now.
I have the belay device here simply to prevent the prusik from getting stuck here. That's
Yeah.
all it's for. It's a tender. It's a prusik tender. That's all it is.
Okay.
Okay. So guys, I'm not going to go any more in depth than this because we spend a whole day working on this system with various parts and substitutions and so on. So if I started going down that road, I think it would yield a lot more questions than I could really answer. But I am willing to answer questions. I may say we're not gonna go into that now. But with that, in that regard, what questions do you have about componentry or building it or anything in the rescue system? Thank you, Gergu.
So is the top part, in case you release the rope, is that top part that will prevent him from falling back down into the
Yes, this is a brake. It's a ratchet.
Okay.
Yeah. So the idea is that as the rope is pulled through here, that it's gonna float right here on the rope as the rope passes through it, and then when we get locked out by having this one come all the way up to the master point, we can set the brakes again. It's like the emergency brake.
But even in between, it's set
reset.
in principle, right?
In principle, it is. Yes.
And in practice.
So there's something in practice. It'll grab at some point. I'm thinking. So one of the great things about coming out on a real glacier or having a real person on the line is you see how this equipment reacts with a real person on it, and it's eye opening. It's eye opening. So that's why I think it's really key for you guys, whether you're going to be on a glacier this year or not. I think it's very important for you to learn this system. And another good thing about it is that this is translatable to all rescue situations, not just glacier rescue. So rock rescue, this is virtually the same system. And in terms of the componentry, it is exactly the same system we use to haul somebody on a rock rescue scenario. So.
And if they pull themselves out, you stop in step one, right?
Yeah, that's the other two scenarios where they climb out, where they're belayed out, and where you lower them involve not this. I would have stopped when I had. Remember when I had the rope tied into a hard knot and just had this on it?
Yeah.
Okay. At that stage, we would diverge into another rope scenario to help get them out of the crevasse.
I think
this is only necessary if you have to haul.
As the last resort.
This is the last resort.
I think
okay.
the automatic situation is you're trying just to first pull and see if the guy, and many people are getting out that way actually.
Yeah.
And you just explain you had a case where he was halfway and he was able to get out and you were pulling.
Yeah.
But then if you have to come to this, it means
it's bad. Usually this only happens if the climber is injured. In which case, there may be other complications, like you may have to go down and administer first aid before you pull them out of there. So that's for another time.
If you're hauling the person out, do you use the rope to get the pack out or something like that? Or
yeah, the reason why we want to have all this extra rope is so that we can do more mechanical advantage on this, and also that we can have other systems that overlay this system. If this rope gets entrenched, which is very likely, then no amount of gargantuan mechanical systems will pull that rope out of the crevasse. It'll just be stuck there. Our anchor will fail or something, or our anchor will fail. That's all that will happen. So sometimes we can just set up one rope and just call it good, and then we set up a completely separate system on another anchor and drop the fresh rope over the end of the crevasse, pad that, and build a system on that rope. So that's why we have to spend a day kind of talking about the different scenarios.
You want to talk about how you would lower somebody another 6 feet?
Yeah, if they got stuck, now this could happen at the crevasse edge, okay? Note this only works one way, right, guys? So it's just pulling rope up. So we're squeezing the life breath out of them. They're stuck on the crevasse edge. We're trying to haul them up. People have died there, by the way, getting smashed. That's why this is important, this releasable. So we could actually release this under tension. Go ahead, Garagoo. And allow the moonter to lower, and then when we want it where we've got it, then we can tie it back up again or otherwise secure it. So that's why this is important. So you can go backwards. You can back out of any bad situation that you're in.
But you can lower them completely, like.
Well, you can only lower them to the end of this. So you can't really go too far, but you can maybe give them a little breathing room to back out of some place you got into. So that's why I was saying that if you just simply attach it and you have to back out, then you're going to have to cut it. Instead of putting them. See, this is the thing. I feel like if you don't have the mental capacity, strength, or if you're frantic or panicked and you can't remember the munter mule, what then? Well, just clip it, you know. Forget about the releasable hitch. You just got to get them attached to the anchor, you know. So it's not the end of the world if you can't remember this knot. It's just an ideal knot to stop, to not paint you into a corner, so to speak. That's a great question. Thanks for bringing that up. What's the next slide? Just a picture of it. And then that was it. Yeah. So there's, in simplest terms, the 3-to-1. It's the climber. This is the upper ratchet. This is going through the pulley at the master point. Okay, so it goes up through the ratchet to the pulley at the master point, and then back. That's the Z. And then this is an example of a 5-to-1 that you install inside of that, which we'll do on the courses and online. So, all right. So that's it, Scott and you guys. It's 8:47. We still have a few more minutes if you want, but you know, if you have any other questions, we can answer them. Or you guys know just enough to be dangerous now? Have you ever had crevasse rescue training? Of course. One time I attended an hour-and-a-half seminar. No.
One thing I was thinking of when you were talking about this is, I guess there's always that concern of, you know, being frantic and panicked, but you don't necessarily want to make any sudden moves such as shock loading the system and being very careful to gently transfer the weight.
Yeah, that's true. When you are ready to transfer, it has to be a coordinated effort with the whole team. Like, okay, the anchor's ready, and the person who's still holding the rope in self-arrest is, I'm coming down, I'm coming down, coming down. Then you're going to see the anchor go, take the load. If it starts to blow, no, go back into self-arrest. Okay, you know, you got to shore it up. So you have to make sure that the anchor is going to be able to hold the load. So yeah, you want to do that very rationally. In a concerted effort, not just, okay, I'm done. Whoosh. Whew. Goodbye.
Find a tree on the picture.
Yeah. Good question. Any others? Good. Let's go ahead and call it. Okay. All right. Thanks, you guys.